Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Set Off Podcast. I'm your host, Grant Sashray. There's a lot of stuff going on with LSU sports this week, as not only do we have spring practice, but we also had pro day yesterday, and then also LSU baseball will kick off the weekend uh, with their matchup against Arkansas. But first, to start off with spring practice. It was your same typical lineup. Gary Nussbaum, QB1, and then AJ Swan and Ricky Collins battling it out for the backup job. But Gary Nussbaum actually struggled a bit, and he actually threw 3 picks, all of them to Sage Ryan, which we'll get to in a second. But and I think he still looked pretty good out there outside of the 3 interceptions. The 3 interceptions had a lot to do with the wind and also the fact that we're in week 3 or 4 in the spring practice. So the defense already kind of knows the plays by now, so they're able to pick up reads better than what a lot of defenses can. So I'm not really too worried about Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, interceptions are going to happen, not like 3, but we're talking about Sage Ryan, who's been with LSU for the past 4 years now. He's entering his 4th year as a member of the squad. So he's one of the veterans of this team. So it's no shocker that he may know some of the plays and some of the routes and the keys to make those type of plays. I'm not taking anything away from Sage Ryan. I think Sage Ryan did improve last year. And I know he's not the 5-star safety that everybody thought he was coming out of high school, but he's still been a decent player in LSU. But Garrett Nussbaum, I'm not too worried about Garrett Nussbaum. I think Garrett Nussbaum is going to be QB1. I think AJ Swan will be the backup quarterback still, just because of his experience, not only being a starter for the past 2 years, but then also having SEC experience as he was a starting quarterback at Vanderbilt, I think last year, maybe even the last 2 years. But I know he was a starter for a significant amount of time for Vandy. Running back is still Josh Williams and Caleb Jackson. They've looked great out there. Josh Williams, 6-time. He's been here for 6 years, so it's a 6th time going around with spring practice. Started off as a walk-on, then eventually earned a scholarship, and is now a starter for LSU. So I didn't expect him to. I always expected him to. Come out strong, fast. He broke a lot of tackles on the Saturday full practice, and so he's looked impressive. Caleb Jackson looks like he's been taking the next step to the running back we all thought he would be. Last year showed a lot of flashes, running over people, and a lot of people got those Leonard Fournette vibes, and he definitely gave up those vibes. And on last Saturday, when the media was allowed to view the whole practice, which was pretty cool, just because usually that was the first one we had this spring. Usually during spring camp, we've been able to watch the first 15 to 20 minutes of the practice. Then we had to get put inside, so we wait on Brian Kelly or the players or whoever's coming in to do interviews. And press conferences. So that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to actually get to see the whole practice and see who's what, who's doing what, who's progressing, and stuff like that. But so a receiver. Let's talk about receivers and tight ends. So the first group of receivers and tight ends were Aaron Anderson, Kyron Lacy, Chris Hilton at receiver, and then Mason Taylor at tight end. Kyron Lacy, no shocker. He skipped first team reps. He's been the starter the last few years. Now he's become the true number 1 receiver, and he's been balling out this spring. He actually made a hell of a catch over Jardine Gilbert, where it was a ball that was a little bit underthrown. He jumped up, literally took the ball off of Jardine Gilbert's back, pulled it in, kept his balance, and ran in for a touchdown. So he made a spectacular play. And Kyron Lacy it looks like he's been taking the next step. Last year, he definitely took a big step. even though he dealt with some consistency issues at the beginning of the year, as we got into the latter half of the year, he started really coming into his own and becoming a reliable option for that offense. Aaron Anderson, kind of same deal. Really, actually, Aaron Anderson really never got to see the field. As we know, he was actually supposed to be brought in to be that utility guy, the guy who's supposed to be the slot guy, be the punt returner. It just never really worked out. Ever since he muffed that punt against Florida State, he really was phased out. You really didn't see a whole lot of him because I think he was just battling inconsistency. Maybe there's some injury. I know he was battling some injuries throughout the year last year, so be very excited to see him. And then Chris Hilton is a guy that has shown flashes, but he's never been able to see the field. So to see Chris Hilton kind of become that number 2 option for Jane Daniels is huge because we all know what Chris Hilton can do. And when he was in high school, he was one of the best receivers, maybe the best receiver in the state out of the class of 2021. So I think he's going to take a huge step this year and may be able to get himself some money not only just in terms of NIL, but when his career is over, I think he could be a guy that could find his way up on NFL draft boards. Not the first round, second round. I'm talking about like just anywhere, like 7th, 6th round. I think he could be a guy that could be drafted due to the fact that LSU has a history of developing and producing wide receivers into the NFL. And you're seeing that right now with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, DJ Chark, OBJ, Jarvis Landry in the past. I mean, the list is long. So it's pretty big that we get to see his development despite him being injured. And the second team, you had CJ Daniels, Xavier Thomas, and Kyle Parker. Kyle Parker is a redshirt freshman. He's from Lovejoy, Texas. He actually balled out last year during fall camp. But obviously because you had Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, and a lot of veteran receivers, he was able to take that redshirt and really develop his game. But he looked impressive last spring and last fall, and he's showing up once again. And right now he's battling for that number 3 spot with Aaron Anderson. And Kyle Parker's been taking first-team reps too, so it's not like he's the pure number 4 receiver. Like don't get me wrong, Aaron Anderson and Kyle Parker battling out for the number 3 spot. And even if Kyle Parker doesn't get the number 3 spot, he's the first guy coming in and rotate with one of the receivers. I mean, his routes are crisp. He knows what he's doing. He just seems like, even though he's a rusher freshman, he seems like he's been there, done that before. And so that's what the staff is looking for, which is one of these sophomores, redshirt freshmen or sophomores, were able to take the next step. And Kyle Parker seems like he's been the guy. A lot of people thought it was going to be Sean Sampson, but right now Sean Sampson just looks raw. He just looks raw. He doesn't look as polished as Kyle Parker. And you see that a lot of times with guys out of high school. I'm not going to criticize their coaches or whatever, but like you could tell which guy was really polished and developed as a receiver compared to the other. And I think Sean Sampson, I'm not going to say he didn't get any development in Catholic, but you could tell the stuff at Catholic was kind of based off of pure talent. He still needs to develop, run crisper routes, be a lot more physical off the line. You can see that when you watch him practice, and I think once he works on that, I think he'd be a great receiver for LSU. But the thing about LSU, they're always going to bring in great receivers. In this next class, you have DeCorian Moore, who's the number 1 receiver in his class for the class of 2025, and then you also have Teron Manchild Francis from Endicott High School in New Orleans. And who knows who else they could bring in too, because LSU's always bringing in at least 2 or 3 receivers each and every recruiting class, just because you may lose guys to the NFL, and then also guys may transfer. So you need to bring in as many bodies as possible. But also for tight end for the second team, it's been Mac Markway has been the backup tight end, and then Kamari and Pimpton, I think we're rotating in with them because of Pimpton's catch radius. Like, he has really long arms. He's 6'7", and I think you'll see him a lot more in passing downs. I think he will play a lot more after last year took a red shirt. So I'll be really excited to see him play. Also, let's see. So O-line, it's been the same lineup for pretty much the whole spring. DJ Chester at center, Garrett Dellinger at left guard, Will Campbell at left guard, and then left tackle. My bad. And then Miles Frazier at right guard. A right tackle, Emory Jones was out for a little bit. I think it was because of injuries. I think he's trying to nurse himself back to health. So in his place, it's either been Tyree Adams and Brett Bordelon. They both took first team reps. They both took reps with the first team for the last week or so when Emory Jones was out. But now that Emory Jones is back, he actually showed up on Tuesday. Tyree Adams has been the backup right tackle. And the coaches really love Tyree Adams. It's been the coaches talk about all the time how much they love Tyree Adams, and I've heard that from different people who cover the program or are a part of the program. That Tyree Adams is a guy that if Emory Jones were to go down, he's the next guy up. So that's pretty huge to hear, especially a guy from St. Augustine High School. Who was a baller at St. Augustine High School, but the last few years, this coaching staff has really fallen in love with him. But moving on to defense, the defense actually I thought was the real winner of the real winner last Saturday. So on the defensive line, you had Jalen Lee, Jacoby Guillory, and Savion Jones on the defensive line, and then on your Jack, which is your outside linebacker, you had Braden Swinson. So that was your first team kind of like front line, and then right behind, and then a linebacker, you had, of course, Harold Perkins and Greg Penn. What the Weeks brothers have been rotating out along with Christian Braithwaite and Devon Keys, the true freshman from Aledo, Texas. But really, I think the reason why the defense was able to shot so much was the secondary. Zay Alexander right now is still coming off his ACL tear. But he's been with the team. He's been at practice. He's been off the side doing rehab stuff. But he looks like he could be a full goal by the time summer hits, and he will be the starter coming into this season because last year he led the team in interceptions before he went down with his injury versus Army, and that was 2 weeks before Alabama. So they were really missing him against Alabama, but he's a very great. Remember, he's a great player. Not only did he lead LSU in interceptions last year, but he was a two-time FCS All-American at Southeastern, and he was also getting recruited by a bunch of different schools when he was in the transfer portal. So he's a great cornerback. But the first team cornerbacks so far have been Javian Toviano and Ashton Stamps. They look to be really improving and taking the next step, and also having a guy like Corey Raymond be able to develop them. They seem like they're going to become their own, and I think they're going to ball out. Javian Toviano was a key target for LSU in the 2024 recruiting class. Not 2024, the 2023 recruiting class, and he's showing why with his as he is one of the better players. He's been one of the better players in the spring camp. And then Ashton Stamps is improving off of his strong year last year. Even though he obviously had those freshman jitters, he still looked like he was one of the a starter, despite him being a freshman and dealing with some stuff. In terms of being a freshman playing against SEC teams, including Alabama and some of the top teams in the SEC, but he still looked good. He still looked like he belonged out there, and I think he's going to take the next step this year. But another guy you need to be watching out for is P.J. Woodland. P.J. Woodland was a 3-star cornerback from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He has really looked impressive so far. He's been getting a lot of second-team reps. He actually made a lot of great plays on Saturday, and I look forward to watching him for the rest of the spring. Another freshman you need to watch out for is safety Deshaun McBride. I mean, he looked like a man among boys, 6'3", 6'4", and 200 pounds. I mean, you would think that he is a sophomore or junior if just looking at him, but he's actually true freshman. And he not only does he have that raw ability, that raw talent, he also has great instincts, and he made a lot of great plays going against some of the better players on the offense, whether it was some of the best receivers, and then also going up against a guy like Kamara and Pimpton, who is 6'7" and is 230, 40 pounds, and he's a really tough guy to guard. And this spring, and then also in the fall, he was giving LSU's defenders a hard time. So I'm glad to see him take the next. So I'm glad to see Deshaun McBride really showing out. A kid from Denton Springs, right down the road from LSU. But Sage Ryan has been a nickelback. He's actually been sharing time with Major Burns. A major development has been that Major Burns will be playing the star position, which is more like the rover or a nickelback. And then Jardine Gilbert has been the starting safety. Jardine Gilbert, of course, is the transfer from A&M. He prepped at U High, which is literally right at LSU's campus. So he's essentially back home. I guess not only from Baton Rouge, but he literally played football on LSU's campus at U High. So he's been taking a lot of first team reps at safety, and I think he's going to be the starting safety moving forward. Moving on to the pro day. So a lot of great things happened in the pro day. Jayden Daniels, of course, looked really good. He threw a lot of great balls, and I think there's one play where he actually threw the ball deep down the field, and it was 65 yards, and like it was a rollout, and he chucked it. And as soon as he chucked it, and everybody saw how far the ball was going, all the scouts and coaches were like, ooh, and it landed right into Chris Hilton's hands, and people started clapping. I was like, oh, that's big time. And Jayden Daniels, of course, was a big time player for LSU last year, or even the last 2 years, but especially last year, where he nearly threw for 4,000 yards, rushed for another 1,000, and then won the Heisman Trophy. So it's great to see Jayden Daniels getting all kinds of love. But anyway, but I think the biggest winner of Pro Day was Malik Neighbors. In case you guys didn't know, Malik Neighbors did not participate in the NFL Combine, so he did most of the drills at Pro Day because the scouts never really got to see him at the Combine because he was not there. So Malik Neighbors, he had a 40-yard dash of 4.35. So he ran two. One was a 4.35, and the second one was a 4.4. And so, like, everyone knew he was fast, but 4.35 is ridiculously fast. I think that may have caught a lot of people by surprise, but I really wasn't. I thought he was a 4.35, 4.4 speed guy. Just if you look at the way he runs on the field, I mean, it's almost like everybody else is running in slow motion because he's just that fast. But really, I think the biggest surprise was his vertical jump. I think more so. I think even more so than the 40 time, because he had a vertical of 42 inches, which would have put him. I think it would have put him like in the top 5, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so if he was at the Combine, yeah, he would have been tied for the second best among receivers. So, so Malik Neighbors definitely had a big day. He had a broad jump of 10 feet 9 inches. He actually had 15 reps on the bench press. So the bench press was 225 pounds. So he repped that 15 times. And also I think another thing was pretty funny was that he had big hands. His hands measured 9.9 inches, and that's, in case you guys don't know, that's pretty big. But he also, and I think talking with Malik Neighbors after the pro day when he came to the presser, he actually woke up at 5 a.m. Not because he was nervous, but because he was anxious to go out there and prove to this is where it's like he wanted to prove the doubters wrong with his 40 time, stuff like that. But he was really anxious to go out there and show everybody what he's fully capable of. And He sure did, big time. A couple other guys who balled out were Omar Spates and Ovi Ochufo. Probably I butchered that. But Ovi, I'll just call him Ovi. But Ovi had a 40-yard dash of 4.48. Well, no, not 4.53. Which is extremely fast for a guy who's 6'3", 250 pounds. He also had a vertical of 34 inches. He had 20 reps at the bench press. He had a broad jump of 9 feet 11 inches, and he had a 20-yard shuttle of 4.48 seconds. And then he also had a 3-cone drill, a time of 7.14 seconds. So yeah, I thought he had a pretty impressive day. And it could be. I think you can make a case that he could be drafted. I think as of right now, he's probably an undrafted free agent. But I think having a pretty good pro day might get some people interested in him, given his experience. He played 4 or 5 years of college football. So I think some NFL teams might invest in that because of experience and his knowledge for the game. Omar Spates, he had a 40-yard dash of 4.65, had a 4.34 he had a 20-yard shuffle time of 4.34 seconds. Had a vertical jump of 31.25 feet. He had a vertical jump of 31.25 inches. He had a broad jump of 10 feet. And but also I think what really took everybody by surprise was his bench press. He actually had 30 reps at the bench press. So he bench pressed 225 pounds 30 times. I mean, he had more reps than Charles Turner. And he also had more reps than I believe it was. He actually had more reps. Yeah, he had more reps than Charles Turner. Charles Turner had 22 reps. And he was able to get 10 more than Charles Turner. And he was actually just 4 short of what Jordan Jefferson, defensive lineman Jordan Jefferson, played for the team last year, not quarterback Jordan Jefferson. But Jordan Jefferson had 34 reps of 225 pounds at the combine. So he fell 4 short of Jordan Jefferson, who was a defensive lineman and at 6'3", 316 pounds, and has to push other 300-pound line. Also has to push other 300-pound men back so we can at least get penetration in the backfield. So that's a pretty big deal for Omar Spates. And I know Omar Spates had his troubles last year, and I think a lot of that had to do with just bad coaching from the defensive coaching staff of last season. Because I thought, even though he had a great year, he still had an okay year, but he was an all Pac-12 linebacker at Oregon State. And he came to LSU, and it was kind of disappointing. But I think a lot of that, again, had to do with coaching, because you can't go from being an all-conference performer at Oregon State just becoming just an okay player at LSU. I think a lot of that had to do with coaching. And the bad coach at LSU has been well documented, too, because you literally have Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas all going in the first round, and they finished the regular season 9-3. And that had a lot to do with the defense. And I think some scouts will actually take that into consideration when it comes to scouting Omar Spates. But anyway, moving on, I think the next thing we're going to talk about kind of shortly is LSU baseball going against Arkansas. LSU is coming off 2 straight SEC series losses to Mississippi State and Florida. Florida was just horrendous way to end the weekend. LSU ended up winning the first game 6-1. Then the next game, they had a 4-2 lead going into the 8th inning. And Florida came back, game winning extras. Jack Caglione hits the game-winning home run, 2-run home run. They win game 2. Game 3, you think LSU may bounce back and try to get this victory, but they look sluggish all game. Thatcher Hurd struggled once again. The bullpen struggled even more, and it ended up being a 12-2 loss against Florida to end the series and a Florida victory. Jay Johnson was ejected in the middle of the game for good reason. I thought, I mean good. When I mean by good reason, I mean that he was in the right. No, one of he was arguing with the umpire. I believe it was about a warning because the umpire gave a warning to both teams about trash talking, and then I guess the I don't know, the ump. I think Jay Johnson got mad at the ump for something. I'm not sure if I forgot what it was. I wasn't sure if it was a player who's trash talking or the ump got the ump kind of chided one of the players. I forgot the whole context was, but I do know Jay Johnson was in the right because it was what's the word I'm looking for? It was an inconsistency with how the game was being called. And that's what he got mad for. Threw a couple of F-bombs, ejected him. And then after the game, I was there as a member of the media. We waited out there for at least 30 to 40 minutes outside of the LSU I would say locker room, but like their facility, because they have their locker rooms and everything. All the baseball offices and the locker rooms and everything is at the box or waiting outside the doors to get into the team room. And the reason why is because but the reason why the way is because the locker room is right next to like the team room, and the team room is where we have our press conferences. And the reason why I think while they held the media members out was because he was giving them an Augie Garrido, which is, if you haven't seen that clip, it's a very famous clip where he's just cursing out his players when he was the head coach of Texas. Just go look it up on YouTube if you don't know what I'm talking about. And actually, I'll probably leave a link for you to go look at it down there. And I think that'll give you kind of a good description of what probably happened. And I think Jay Johnson was ripping his team. He's extremely disappointed in their effort on Sunday. He even talked about it in his presser after the game, and I also think this week. So it's a pretty big weekend for LSU baseball. They're not going to pitch Luke Coleman today. Instead, they'll hasn't been announced, so they'll pitch Luke Coleman on tomorrow and have Gage Jump pitch on Saturday. I don't know who's going to start game one. It might be Cade Anderson. It might be Nate Ackenhausen. It might, who knows who could pitch. But this is what teams did against Paul Skeens last year, and where they were afraid to pitch of their starting pitcher in game one. So that way they can have for games 2 and 3. And maybe hopefully they'll steal a game in game 1 and they have their best pitcher start game 2 and game 3. But the reason why is because Arkansas has a fantastic pitcher by the name of Higgins Smith. For anybody who doesn't know, but for LSU fans, we all know who Higgins Smith is. Higgins Smith has been impossible to hit off of. Whenever he's always been LSU batters have always had a hard time trying to hit off of Higgins Smith. He's basically what Paul Skeens was to everybody else last year. Higgins Smith is that to LSU. Higgins Smith right now is 4-0 in the year with a 1.24 ERA and leads the SEC in strikeouts with 62, and he's only walked 10 batters all year. So hopefully LSU, and I think this is a good strategy because I don't think they're going to win game 1. LSU's never done well against Higgins Smith. But I think, and then even though Arkansas is probably one of the best pitching staffs in the country, it'd be a lot easier to win game 2 and game 3 than win game 1. So I think it's a good strategy to save Luke Coleman and Gage Jump for game 2 and game 3, especially given how well they've pitched against some of the best hitters in the country throughout the year. But LSU really needs to get a series victory this weekend to kind of be a momentum booster for LSU for the rest of the season because they've had a really tough start to the SEC play. The bullpen needs to do a little bit better. LSU needs to hit the ball. Kind of the same old. They just need to find the consistency. I know Michael Braswell has been hitting a lot better. I know Mac Beanham's hitting a lot better, but they need to find a way to get runs outside of hitting home runs. They really need to. Otherwise, I think otherwise it's gonna be a very tough weekend for LSU, especially going against one of the best pitching staffs in the country. But anyway, I'm your host Grant Sachere. Uh, we'll have another episode tomorrow. We'll preview the NCAA tournament, women's tournament, as LSU will be playing UCLA. We'll also talk about the Washington Post article that's supposedly supposed to be coming out really soon. That's on Kim Mulkey. That she regards as a hit piece. We'll talk about all that. And then also probably recap game. We'll also recap game 1 of the LSU Arkansas series. But anyway, I'm your host, Grant Sachere. I'll see y'all guys tomorrow. Peace, y'all.